retired prison governor, and author Vanessa Frake-Harris, and David Spencer joins us, who's the head of crime and justice at Policy Exchange. Hi, Vanessa, how are you?
Yeah, good evening, Johnny. I'm good, thank you.
And welcome to the programme, David, as well. Good to have you on.
Good evening.
Vanessa, we'll start with yourself. What's your thoughts on this? Should we scrap short-term prison sentences? Are they just too ineffective?
Absolutely, they are, without a doubt. You know, when you have a prisoner who is given, say, 6 months, out of that he does 3 months. Now, that's a great interruption to somebody's life. So you're looking at homelessness, you're looking at family ties, you're looking at maybe treatment programs. All of this goes out the window. So actually, in a prison, you know, working with somebody for 3 months, there's very little you can do rehabilitation-wise. So what in actual fact happens is we let them out of prison to nothing. So all their alternative is to commit further crimes. You know, more than half of prisoners who are sentenced to 12 months or less go on to reoffend. And those that are sentenced to 6 months or less, it's around about 58% that go on to reoffend. So it's proven, the statistics are there, that short prison sentences do not work. They don't have the public confidence, and they cost money.
I think the current rate is 63% for those serving 12 months or less reoffend. In your experience, and I take it it's not exactly a scientific term, but just anecdotally, with the prisoners that you saw in short-term sentences, how often did you see them again? Was it a revolving door?
Absolutely, without a doubt. You know, when you let somebody out who's lost their home, lost their family ties, lost their support systems, and you let them out to nothing, well, obviously they're going to commit further crime. You know, it is the revolving door, and once they get on that roundabout of crime, it's very difficult for them to get off it. And I think also we need to look at why they're repeat offending. I think, you know, a lot of it comes from poverty, homelessness, mental health issues, drug addiction, and these are things that should be dealt with in the community. Under community sentences. There is no doubt that we need to strengthen our community sentences and manage them better, without a doubt, so that, you know, the public has confidence in them.
Let me just bring in
certainly there are a lot of people in prison, Johnny, that shouldn't be there.
Let me just bring in David then. David Spencer, Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange. What do you make of what you've heard, David? Should we get rid of short-term sentences?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Vanessa says, and I have to say, I think our book from a few years ago is excellent if you're looking for an insight into what happens in prison. But the reality is that prison has a number of purposes, and one of those is rehabilitation, but the others are to punish those who break the law, to protect the public, and to deter people from committing crime. And the reality is that most people who are sent to prison for, yes, short sentences perhaps, often have a litany of previous sentences in the past, including community sentences, and it's unsurprising that those who obey the laws set down by Parliament expect those who choose to break the law repeatedly go to prison. And, you know, I have to say, I rather wonder, why should the shopkeeper who experiences someone coming into their shop day after day, stealing their products, have to put up with that? And the reality is a less permissive environment for crime means that there needs to be consequences for those who choose to commit crime.
Yeah, I mean, the argument that it doesn't necessarily rehabilitate is a strong one, but also, David, I guess we have to think about the fact that there needs to also be a sense of justice for victims, and very often that is seeing people go to prison.
That's right. I think that's right. And the reality is, you know, some people have said, well, in this country we're addicted to punishment. The reality is that about 7% of those people who are convicted of criminal offences every year are sent to prison. And most of those people, when we're talking about short sentences, will have had a number of community sentences in the past. And I think an increase in the number of community sentences and judges having confidence that community sentencing is working is a good thing. But removing removing the option from the judiciary to say, actually, we've reached the end of the road here, removing that option of the judiciary being able to send people to prison is the wrong way to go about things.
Is there, though, perhaps an approach that we should be reforming what punishment actually is, David, in our own minds and reframing it? Because, yes, if you're a victim of crime, you want to see someone punished, and we traditionally associate that with taking their liberties away and chucking them behind bars. But maybe if we saw it more as doing that, but also enabling them to give back to a community in the sense of community reparation, and the idea that it's not costing you as a victim and as a taxpayer to keep them behind bars, then maybe that's more profitable for everybody.
But don't get me wrong, Johnny. I think that sentences served in the community certainly are worthwhile, are something that we should be doing, and I absolutely encourage that. The reality is, though, that when people are sent to prison, they are often sent at the end of a litany of those sorts of sentences. And the reality is, if we remove that option from the judiciary, I think we remove a really powerful and important tool when we're talking about actually supporting victims, being able to respond to people who are actually have already been through the criminal justice system many, many times. I think it's important that judges have the option to deal with these people once they get to that point.
And isn't that really valid, Vanessa? A, that victims feel like they have a sense of justice, and B, that people realise they cannot keep breaking the law without a serious repercussion.
Yes, to a point, but at the moment, community service sentences don't deal effectively with the reasons for the crime. They don't look at the drug addiction, the mental health issues, the alcohol addiction. You see people, scrubbing graffiti off a wall. That is not a form of rehabilitation, which is what I'm saying is that the community services as is not effective. Therefore, we need to harden that to give public confidence in the community service and to help petty criminals who may do it because they're drug addicts or alcoholics or homeless or whatever. That is the issue here. I don't say that, prison hasn't got a place in society. Absolutely it has. And the number one job of a prison is to protect the public. The second job of a prison is retribution, and the third job is rehabilitation. We lock up the most prisoners in Western Europe, and we have the worst rehabilitation rates in Western Europe. To me, that says it all.
And that is a very stark figure, isn't it, David, finally, that if we're locking up more people than anybody else, but we've got such a high reoffending rate, 63%, it would suggest it's simply not working.
Well, once again, I find myself in violent agreement with Vanessa. Tougher community sentences, which are more consequential, are absolutely what should happen. My argument would be that the reality is that there are some people for whom those sentences are simply not going to be effective. And for those people, absolutely, judges and magistrates should have the option to send those people to prison.
Well, I feel like we should conclude there with a sense of harmony, because it's quite nice to be able to do that in such a debate. Listen, both, thank you very much. Some really interesting points. I'm sure it'll get people get in touch with the show. Thanks, Vanessa. Thanks, David. Thanks very much.
David.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
David Spencer.